Okay, guys, let's do this. This is the last bit. Oh, God. Right. So, protection of species. International, essentially the idea is of international collaborations. So it's kind of international collaboration and more UK specific measures. Okay, so this let's get into it now. And I'm trying to justify like some of this stuff in a way that kind of makes sense, gives it a reason to be there. I'm trying my best. Okay. Right, so biodiversity conservation. Why does it need international cooperation? Because ecosystems and habitats, they might not be confined to specific countries, first of all. Okay, you might get a situation where one particular habitat extends across national boundaries. Okay, also, different populations of the same species may exist in different countries, right? With the same different countries that might share similar habitats or habitat conditions, and therefore the same species can be in different countries. Okay, and therefore conservation efforts might need to be coordinated because of that. All right. Countries working in isolation may not have the same impact as when working together. Okay, and to address these ideas, there are a number of different international agreements, okay, to ensure that conservation is more effective. The first of these is CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Okay, essentially CITES is about international trade. And the concept here that is important is that if you have an endangered species, then if you have a way to have an agreement between countries that says we will not trade in any product that is dependent, that needs that requires a particular animal or a particular species to be killed. If we prevent the trade of that, then there's no market for that particular product or specimen. And if there's no market, hopefully we're reducing the temptation or the drive or the motivation for hunting and killing of these organisms. So removing the trade removes the market. Removing the market then means that people just don't see a point in killing these organisms. Okay. However, the last point is that even though you can impose these rules, if people still want the product, then the market still exists. So whether that's illegal trade, right? So what you're doing is you're controlling the legal trade, and that might go some way to kind of preventing the trade, but you've still got an illegal market that exists because people still want the product. Okay, so that's the other thing. Okay, the next idea is this Rio. So there was a convention on biological diversity, and the Rio Convention's aims are different to that of CITES. Okay, so Rio Convention's focus is not about the trade. It's about making sure that countries are kind of taking responsibility for the biodiversity in their own, within their borders. And if all countries are kind of doing that, then that's healthy for the biodiversity of the the whole biosphere. Okay, so it's kind of asking countries to take responsibility for A, the biological diversity of the organisms, and B, kind of also considering that the ultimate goal of this can't just be the biodiversity, because at the expense of the human population. Okay, the idea is that not only do you take consideration of the diversity of the organisms, you also consider how the biodiversity can be useful to people, i.e., you're trying to do things in a sustainable way. And as long as things are sustainable, then biodiversity benefits, humans also benefit. Okay, then goes into the kind of detail of what the aims of the Rio Convention are. Okay, sustainability is important, biological diversity is important, but then also, sharing the benefits of the biodiversity for the good of the human population. Okay. Then we move on to international collaboration and why that is useful. Okay. And then the idea of, the way I'm seeing it now is like, you have the Rio Convention and it has its kind of requirements for what each country should do. And then you move on to this last bit, which is essentially the UK's response to that, which is, right, Rio Convention, you say we should do these things, these are the things that we are doing. Okay, and an example of this is the kind of preservation of the countryside of the United Kingdom. Okay, so there's an old scheme which was in 1991 and after that, which eventually got then replaced in 2005 by a very similar thing, but this is the current one, and there was a previous one in 1991, just be aware of that. Okay, but essentially, this is about preservation of the countryside. It's about the government is funding this. Okay, so this is important. It comes from kind of taxpayers' money, so you are paying for this, or your parents. All right, so government funding is being kind of given to local authorities and maybe even private landowners. Okay, so local authorities and private landowners, the government's giving them money and essentially asking them to preserve habitats, restore things to how they might have been in the past, including buildings and habitats. So habitats in terms of biodiversity, but it's not just habitats. They're also promoting like a more kind of traditional, so traditional way of life in the countryside, but also access. So making it possible for people from other parts of the country to come and visit, for the benefits that people get from visiting. So I don't know, for themselves, maybe generate more funding for continued conservation efforts, but also, it's making less sense here, but also education. So kind of taking responsibility for educating people, students, about conservation, about lifestyles in different parts of the country, more traditional ways of life, and so on. Okay, so that's that. Thank God for that. That's over. My goodness, I'm sorry to have done that to you, but yeah, there it is. And I just wanted to say that, well, I've gone through this last bit on conservation, maybe assuming, I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on what needs explaining and what doesn't, but if there's any part of this that you feel, I went over too quickly, actually a bit of explanation, a bit of elaboration would have helped, just let me know. Put a message in or something, if if I can address any part of this, I will do so in a follow-up video if necessary. Okay, right, thank you guys.